When you're trying to see if a person qualifies as your dependent, it's often necessary to determine who provides most of the support to the potential dependent. What exactly is support, and how is it determined? I'm the Tax Geek, and here is determining dependent support, oversimplified. There are two different support tests when it comes to qualifying a dependent. For someone claiming a qualifying child, it doesn't matter who actually supports the child, as long as the child doesn't provide over 50% of their own support. For a person claiming a qualifying relative, you and your spouse must provide over 50% of the potential dependent support. If you'd like a refresher course on the various tests that must be met to claim a dependent, check out this much earlier video of mine on the subject. The actual support calculation is done the same way, regardless of the support test that is used. The first step in calculating support is to determine the dependent's contribution to their own support. Simply having income and savings doesn't necessarily indicate that the dependent is providing any of their own support. Only the amounts from income and savings that are actually used for support expenses count. For example, Tina is 19 and works a part-time job while living with her parents. Her income is $6,500. From her income, Tina kept $1,300 for personal expenses over the course of the year and put the remaining $5,200 in her savings account. Only the $1,300 she actually spent counts towards Tina's contribution to her own support. The next step in calculating support is to determine the dependent's share of total household expenses. If the home is owned, we start with the fair rental value of the home and its furnishings. A home's fair rental value can usually be determined by looking at a real estate site such as Zillow.com and adding 15 to 20%. This is the typical difference between the rental rates for furnished and non-furnished homes. Notice that we don't use mortgage payments, interest, and property taxes in determining household expenses. If the home is rented, the full rent is included, plus, like before, 15 to 20% for the rental value of the furnishings. To that, utilities, home repairs, and insurance are added. Food expenses for the household includes the cost of all the food eaten by the household, including meals eaten outside the home that the household pays for. Finally, any additional expenses that apply to the whole home are added, including cleaning supplies, pet care, pest control, and lawn care. Also included are large purchases, such as appliances, furniture placed in the common living area, and entertainment systems that the entire household can use. This calculation is very similar, but not identical, to the calculation that must be done when determining household support to qualify for the head of household or qualifying surviving spouse filing statuses. The total household support is then divided by the number of persons in the household to determine the dependent's share of household support. If the potential dependent does not live with you, only the costs associated with the dependent's household are taken into account. Next, we determine the direct contribution to the dependent's support. This includes the dependent's clothing and grooming, education, entertainment and recreation, out-of-pocket medical and dental expenses, gifts, and large purchases that are specifically for the dependent's use. These expenses are added to the dependent's share of household expenses to come up with the total funds used to support the dependent. If the potential dependent meets the other test for a qualifying child, and they contribute less than 50% of their total support, you can claim the dependent as a qualifying child. If the potential dependent meets the test for a qualifying relative, and you provide more than 50% of that person's support, you can claim that person as a qualifying relative. Rarely is it necessary to determine support when claiming a qualifying child, unless the child has a very high income or receives Social Security or other benefits in their own name. Where support tests are used most often is when attempting to claim a qualifying relative, particularly when children attempt to claim parents as dependents. For example, Pauline and Jacob help support Pauline's mother, Ellie. Ellie lives on her own in a small apartment and she uses her entire $18,696 in Social Security benefits for her household and personal expenses. Pauline and Jacob send Ellie $500 per month to assist with her monthly expenses. In addition, they purchase a new television for Ellie for $450. Pauline and Jacob's $6,450 contribution to Ellie's support is less than 50% of her total support of $25,146. Even though Ellie meets all the other tests for Pauline and Jacob to claim her as a qualifying relative, she fails the support test. Therefore, Pauline and Jacob cannot claim Ellie as a dependent. Now let's suppose that instead Ellie lives in an assisted living facility at an annual cost of $42,000. Less a small allowance of $100 per month, the remainder of her Social Security benefits are paid to the assisted living facility, and Pauline and Jacob pick up the remaining cost of $25,404, in addition to spending an average of another $125 per month on gifts and other personal expenses for Ellie. Here, clearly Pauline and Jacob's contribution to Ellie's support outweighs Ellie's contribution, and since she still meets all the other tests for claiming a qualifying relative, and she passes the support test, Pauline and Jacob can claim her. If multiple persons together provide over 50% of a potential dependent support, only one person gets to claim them as a dependent. If the persons can agree on who claims the dependent, a Form 2120 or multiple support declaration is filed with the return of the person who actually claims the dependent. This person must provide over 10% of the dependent support. The multiple support declaration states that all other persons who provided over 10% of the dependent support have signed written statements waiving their right to claim the dependent. Christine, Sidney, Barry, and Diane together provide 75% of their parent Carla's support. Christine provides 35%, Sidney 25%, Barry 10%, and Diane 5%. Either Christine or Sidney may claim Carla as a dependent, but whoever relinquishes their claim must be listed on the declaration and provide a signed, written statement waiving their right to claim Carla. Neither Barry nor Diane can claim Carla under a multiple support agreement, and neither has to be listed on the declaration. In this case, Sidney, who is claiming Carla, doesn't have to send Christine's statement with return, but he must keep it in his possession. If Christine and Sidney cannot agree on who claims Carla, no one can. Of course, there's more to support than what I've described here, and links to additional resources and information can be found in the video description. If you found this video informative, please give it a like and share it with anyone who could find it useful. Subscribe to the channel for additional oversimplifications of our overcomplicated tax system. And your questions, comments, and suggestions are always welcome in the comment space below. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon with more of your taxes oversimplified.